So welcome back. Now we're going to go through some of the basic syntax of PHP. So PHP has a whole bunch of keywords. A lot of these are kind of taken from C. Probably the weirdest thing when I write PHP when I switch back and forth between PHP and other languages is the fact that the variable names start with $signs. And you'll find this is annoying for a while, but you get used to it. The lack of a variable with a $sign can be a kind of a weird thing because in different places, like a string that looks like this in PHP sometimes can be sort of like misinterpreted. But they all have to start with $signs followed by underscores and letters and numbers just like any other language. But just understand that they've got to have $signs. And it turns out that I actually like it when I get used to it because we're increasingly mixing PHP and JavaScript. In JavaScript, you can put $signs in the variable names, but we tend to avoid that so that then I can kind of be looking at a line of code and immediately know, like with $sign variables, oh, that's the PHP code that I'm working in, and the JavaScript code, because JavaScript is kind of similar to PHP in case matters on variable names. Like I said, there is certain situations that if you omit the $sign, sometimes it freaks out more than others. And so in this case, it doesn't freak out, and in this case, it does freak out. And it has to do with the fact that there are these predefined constants that you use this define statement to define. So y or x in this case with no $sign could be a predefined constant. A predefined constant could participate in an expression, and that ends up seeming like 0 with no error. But it's certainly not, you can't do an assignment statement to a predefined constant. And so just understand, and this is kind of a PHPism, when you forget the $sign, it may or may not blow up on you, and so you should mentally have a background thing in your mind like, oh, wait a sec, what am I doing here? Look for the $signs. Again, this is another weird thing depending on how your PHP is configured. In early versions of PHP, the syntax was allowed where this string maps to that in an array, and it actually sort of adds the double quotes here. Not all PHPs do it because you can compile PHP in different ways. So it's just, don't omit the $sign. That's the lesson here. Don't omit the $sign. So there's a lot of things in PHP that I actually love and wish were in other languages, but not likely. All these other languages have their worlds and they love them and whatever. So string literals can be single quotes or double quotes. The backslash is used as an escape character. That's pretty typical among C-based languages. Strings can span multiple lines. You just start it, enter, 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 and then stop it. I love that. The weirdness is that double quoted strings are quite different than single quoted strings. In a language like Python or JavaScript, they tend to be the same, and we have reasons to use them. And concatenation, these are different, and PHP is the only language does this. Concatenation is the dot operator, not the plus operator. Most other languages, and historically it had to do with the fact that other languages that do object orientation use the dot in object orientation notation, but PHP existed without OO, object orientation, and so it used the dot operator for concatenation. And I love the dot operator for concatenation, but no other language is ever going to adopt it, and so it's quite frustrating, even though I think it's a super elegant choice that PHP made. So, and I like the double quoted strings, but you got to be responsible when you use the quick and dirty $sign substitution in double quoted strings. It's again, with great power comes great responsibility. So here's some examples of double quotes, and so the fact that we have a double quote, there's an echo statement which does the printing, a new line at the end, just like most C-based languages, and Python is also like this. The new lines are rather explicit, and you got to manage the notion that we come to the end of a line and we go to the beginning of the next line. You can embed new lines in a multi-line string, so this one starts here and ends there, and there's a new line there and a new line there. You can put a new line in the middle. It's the same. And this is probably the weirdest part that people don't understand and don't get so well. And that is in double quoted strings, when there is a $sign, it looks for a variable with that name, and out comes the 12. So this actually substitutes and puts the 12 in here. And so that's cool. I tend to only use it for debugging. It's kind of dangerous because you got to be careful not to introduce bad HTML into your output. So that's double-quoted strings. And so single-quoted strings are quite different. Single-quoted strings are really simple. They don't do any substitution, and the backslash doesn't work quite the same, right? So here's a single-quoted string. You can have embedded new lines that have new lines in them, and so that part works. And you can, one of the reasons I tend to use single-quoted strings is so I can use a double quote as a character. That's kind of nice. You can put a single quote into a single-quoted string by backslash single quote. But a lot of the other backslash characters don't expand, and that's actually kind of frustrating. If I could change one thing, I would want the new line to expand, but it doesn't. It actually prints out \n. And it doesn't do variable expansion, and that is a good feature of PHP strings, that it doesn't do variable expansion, because that can get you in some trouble. You can kind of end up in a mistake where you didn't mean for an expansion to happen. So I actually, when I'm writing code, I tend to use single quotes whenever I can and only use double quotes when I have an intention to use double quotes. So single quotes is my preference, and then I use double quotes. And so if you look at some of my code, you'll see I'll have a single quote, blah, 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 concatenate with double quote, blah, blah, blah. And so I mean, I use single quotes and double quotes very consciously in PHP. PHP is one of my favorite languages for comments, and that's because they just took all of the comment styles and made them work. And so there is a comment style with C++ where you say / and it's a comment to the end of the line. There is a block comment that comes really out of C, that is / as much as you want to */. It's a multi-line comment. And then the shell style comment, which really comes from Perl, says anything after the # is a comment. And so whatever language you come from, you can use the commenting syntax of it. I definitely use this kind of comment and that kind of comment all over the place. We use this kind of comment for built-in documentation, and that's really nice. And I tend not to use the #. I just want to think of PHP like C or C++. PHP is actually getting like C++ in the later versions. So I already mentioned that echo is the way we print, but there's also this thing called print. And it has to do with the fact that shell scripts say echo and Perl said print. And so both of them work. They have subtle differences. Echo is part of the language. It's a language construct. And print is actually a function, which only takes one parameter, but with parentheses that are optional. So in all my code, I don't quite know why I chose to do this. Maybe it's because I don't like Perl, but I don't use print at all. But you're going to look at code and people might want to use it. That's just my choice. I tend to use echo for everything. It's shell script and print is from Perl. Neither of them are from C. If there was something from C, I would probably prefer that one. And so up next, we're going to talk about operators and expressions and how we perform calculations in PHP.